back to Next Stage Podcast, everybody. We got Adam Rush in the studio today. My man is a local poet, performer. Would you call yourself a musician? Do you play any instruments? I don't know. I've never seen you play.
I've never played any instruments.
I was gonna say musician because it felt right, but I didn't want to like.
But I played bass in college for a little while and acoustic guitar, but nothing that I would say that actually knew an instrument, for example.
Well, your voice is an instrument, though, because you emote in a way and you put your poetry across in a way that's very unique, and I think people need to hear that, to experience it and to understand. So we were going to start with a piece, right?
Yeah, we're going to start with Reckoning.
Reckoning by Mr. Adam Rush. Here we go. First time live in the studio with poetry here.
This reckoning can't last. We all react when our frequency is hacked. We crash the crazy diamonds, drive the headless shaman to ground. Morrison and Mars, nightmares without stones. This reckoning can't last. It begs for us at last, cut and born to threads in this unexhausted light. Grab me a stick of fire. Burn, dive. Inside they can't get me. This reckoning can't last. It begs for time to pass. It strengthens with every blow, judged by every crowd. We all react when media forces realign behind false minds. This reckoning can't last. When is the next false flag? I can't read this rag. A generation without a center, children without mentors or minders. This reckoning can't last. It forgets us in the past. Judged by every crowd, strengthens in every blow. This reckoning can't last. Words the backward cause. Broken reclusive law. Abundant feed for the ones that need shiny clothes without warmth. Compromise, compensate for no eternal shine. Reckon, beckon, beckon, heckle, wrestle, rustle, bustle, hustle those payments from the weak. Track, howl, heal, the horror. There is a reckoning. Our frequency hacked. We don't react. There is a reckoning. Our frequency hacked. We don't react. Dismissing fact.
Yeah, man.
Right on.
I love it.
Well,
and
the dome.
Mr. Jesse Lynch on guitar. He's off camera.
Yeah.
In case you couldn't see him. Well, you couldn't. We know you couldn't. But, man, what I always loved about your poetry is the music presentation behind it. The fact that you have gathered this collective of people that you connect with, and they all play different instruments, and it's never the same Adam family, but there's always a musical element to it. Yeah. Sometimes I've seen poetry read or performed at open mics or other places, and not to knock it, but I feel like I'm at church sometimes when it's just someone reading very straightforward and dryly. But for you, it's a performance, and I wonder what made you choose to do that with poetry? Because did you start writing? Did you have musical inclination at first? How did you?
I think it really, I think it started probably in college, I think. I'd always written poetry since the 4th grade, so I've always read poetry to myself or read it to other people. Not a huge group, of course. But what happened was I went to college. I got to meet a lot of musicians that I normally wouldn't have met, and we ran this coffee house we call Brown Water. Brown Water Coffee House.
Where'd you go to college? Where was this at?
Rider University in Lawrenceville, New Jersey.
Okay.
And we started our own coffee shop basically with our own money to have all our performance people come and perform. It was like 8 or 10 people, 8 or 9, 10 people that did it.
Just because you guys all loved that kind of stuff? Like how'd that...
We were the kind of the misfits on campus.
Yeah.
You know, the artsy types, you know what I mean? Some were in theater.
Yeah.
Other ones were more of what I would call, you know, live music lovers. There's a lot of them around here. And they're kind of part of the band too.
Okay.
Just like you said, I don't play an instrument. There's a lot of people out there that are part of a band that they don't play an instrument, but they're there. They're, you know, and that's part of what we try to do with the Adam family, with all the different musicians, and have kind of a, you know, a group of almost family members, you know, that you go through together. And we have several different family members. There's several uncles and
maybe some cousins you don't talk about.
Exactly. But I say in college I did, and then when I got out of college and finished college and came back to this area, I actually met a guy named Benoit who really started playing with me, and we used to do shows down in the city. And he was a mixed media guy too.
Yeah,
he was a part of this group called the FAR, Film Arts Revolution, that did a show at Tuxedos actually in the 90s. And basically what they would do is they would do film behind you as the musicians were playing. Oh,
kind of like a Pink Floyd in the early days thing.
Exactly.
Putting something. I love that effect when you see like a film projected over a band, because it kind of creates this weird shadow thing, like the band's in shadow.
And they took it to another level where they put a film in front of the musicians, so now the musicians have something to inspire on too. The idea is to bounce these multimedias off of each other.
So you were hanging out with cats who are into the multimedia experience in general.
Exactly.
You got that taste in college, and you said, like, here, we put this little coffee house collective together, and now you met somebody who's on that same kind of frequency.
It felt like a real natural progression.
Yeah.
You know, if you hang out with enough, you know, actors and musicians and you know, anything interpretive dancers, you're going to feed off some of their energy, and you're going to want to collaborate with them. You know, we you know, artists don't take that very lightly. You know, we love our art and we want to share it with people. We don't want it to be something that's, in my opinion, as far as I'm concerned, elite or stuck up.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you get from when you're saying you're just hearing it by the words itself. It's partly the delivery, but it's also partly the concept that poetry is stuffy. It's something that, you know, guys with long hair, white hair, and wigs used to write about.
Right.
It's lost its touch in society. It has not lost its touch. It may be on the fringes and not out in front of you, because a lot of them turned into copy editors, and commercials are big these days. You know, who do you think writes all these taglines? Poets. You know, that's what we do. So, in a way, you know, it's a chance to share that art, and that's what we're really trying to do.
So, what do you think? You mentioned about like the change of poetry, and that you know, the opportunities aren't there for poets in some ways. You said something about going to be copy editors, this and that. Yeah. Do you think that people appreciate poetry the same way they do? The same way they used to? Is there an appreciation loss, or is it the presentation style that's different?
That's a good question. I would say that both are kind of in need now. Yeah. The presentation, most immediate, because I do have this believing that we're kind of all poets inside, just like we're all writers inside and musicians. There's a sound, a voice inside us that comes out, and it comes out in different forms. So it's there. So it's really about presenting it. But it's also the idea that, you know, poetry is, it's become very commercialized, you know, poetry.com, you know, roses are red, violets are blue, you know, it's lost its kind of biting, you know, Kubla Khan poem, and you know, a lot of these poems that people don't know about that talked about things that we're dealing with now, you know, being drunk and sucking on the milk of paradise, right? I mean, what are we doing?
Coolidge, widening in the gyre, you know, the center cannot hold, sort of thing.
Exactly.
Like that's like the cycles of.
There's a reason why there's poets that live. Their words have lived for a really long time, and when they were writing poetry, John Keats is a perfect example, was ridiculed, he ended up dying not even knowing that his poetry would last all these years.
Do you think that's very common amongst the poets of that are lauded now, maybe didn't get their due at the time?
Well, I think, no one can tell until it's after.
Yeah,
and
right. Who's
here to write that history or track it. But, yeah, I do believe that. I think that poets naturally, instinctively, I believe, are prophetic. They see in the future. Maybe not, a lot of people make fun of Nostradamus. Why can't you just say Hitler? It's Hister. But all that was poetry that he wrote. He wrote it in a poetry form. He wrote prophecy in a poetry form.
Wow.
So, you think about it, it's quatrains. It's like Don Quixote, it's the same concept, So in a way, poets can, see the future, and then those people read that later on, and they're like, wow, this guy knew what was going on, like right now.
Yeah, how did they know?
Exactly.
What do you think poetry is? That's such a hard question, and I'm putting you on the spot by asking it, because you could probably go for hours about what poetry is.
I'll do a simple one, because I do that. I do this. I do this on my shows as an intro sometimes.
Okay.
I'll either do. Most of the time I'll read a poem without any music at all, just to introduce people to what I really do, what is it about, and get a feel for what that is. But one thing I do say in it, I say this one line, it's a Jim Morrison quote, actually.
Hey, he's looking over us right now.
My
man's.
Listen, real poetry doesn't say anything. It just opens up all the doors, opens up all the possibilities, and you can choose which one to go through. And that's kind of what it is.
So that's the summation of what you would say you think poetry is and what you would do with it, is to just give people options?
Well, and to be inviting.
Yeah.
I used to, when I was in college, I did not like Shakespeare a lot, because I felt a lot of his poetry was like, well, what are you saying? Just say it already.
Yeah.
And I don't slide into journalism because I don't feel like it's dry what I'm saying, but I do like to speak in the common voice.
Yeah.
Poetry needs to be something everybody feels on every level. And as soon as you get where you're happy to hear your own words, it sounds so nice. Oh, this word makes no sense. I'll have to look it up in a dictionary. Really, what are you doing at this point? Who are you writing for? Are you writing for yourself, or are you writing for somebody to get something out of it, feel something out of it?
So you think sometimes it gets too flowery, where it loses the connection, and people feel distant from poetry because they feel like, oh, that's a smart person's look up things in a dictionary game. But if you think it should be more the common voice? Yeah,
that's exactly pretty much. I like to think that, instead of talking down to people, talking on the same keel with each other. You're on the same street. We're digging the same street, It's going to be the same when you walk it as I do. There's going to be potholes in it just the same. And we're both going to have to make moves to move it away.
Yeah.
But at least we have that chance because we know that's the street, instead of people that just, flying above you, and they're like, who cares?
Would you say the goal is establishing a commonality?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think, common man, something people can understand. And, one person said at a Yorktown show, which I thought was pretty interesting, because I always try to get feedback on what people actually think of this, because some people like the music and get more attached to that. Some are more into the words. We also had a live artist for a while, which was an interesting element too. It's like the third element of creation going on right in front of your eyes. And I think that was our artist, Allegra Jordan, that did that for
painting?
us. Yeah, she did painting.
I saw a couple of shows where you had her painting with you.
She would sketch out something ahead of time and then paint it while the show's going on. So it's, we had her do some of the band members, which was pretty interesting.
Really? Like caricatures?
Yeah, well, no, real pictures of them.
Really? Yeah. Like painted portraits while the band was playing?
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, wow, man. That's multimedia. You're talking about the video thing. This is live creation.
It's always what I've been trying to do. The three things is basically film, music, and poetry. Has always been the three that I've always been trying to do. Back then it was film, more like projections and movies, but I think the natural progression is to go something primitive, like something that's actually creating it before your very eyes. So
a physical creation,
like a physical drawing,
or a sculpture or something,
even like that. Even that could be something would be down the line.
What's the attraction that you have to this synergy of things? Why do you think it's necessary to bring poetry, music, physical art?
That's a good question. I think, one, it makes it interesting.
Yeah.
And I think, it's kind of like that idea that everybody can get something out of it. Like that's a thing I was going to say before, is that, people will always tell me what they thought of this poem. And for a while I would tell them, and it always was a letdown to what they got in their mind, which is incredible stuff. So I started just saying, well, what did you get out of it? And then just kind of confirm that that's what they got, even though it might have not been. I wasn't trying to be disingenuous, but I wanted to strengthen their ideas, because this is what I want to hear. I want you to be able to read back to me what you're getting out of it. That's great feedback for me. That guy said in Yorktown, for example, he said, it's like you're communicating. You're telling me something. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and whether you like it or not, that's a great compliment. It's because that's part of the reason why I just speak instead of actually sing. Because I feel like it hits people on a different level, a more visceral level.
Do you think it's closer to like a conversation then?
Exactly, and they're involved in this conversation.
Yeah, because we don't like sing to each other. I'm not going to be like, hey, Adam, nice to see you. I mean, I could, but you might be like, I'm going to go on the other side of the street. This guy's a little weird.
Yeah, but you might sing that and I might not even know you're singing. You see what I'm saying? There's a lot of camouflage in singing.
Yeah, true.
You get away with a lot of stuff. I'm like, what did he just say? Exactly.
Yeah, well, I guess in ways the words become secondary. You consider opera, it's hard to understand anything they're saying, even if it's not even a different language. The vowel formation and the way they enunciate is just so beyond what we're used to hearing that it could be in your native tongue, but you don't get it because it's just all over. So you think poetry, the way you do, it's like it's a conversation straight to the person. Right.
And I think that, yeah, exactly. I mean, it goes right back to wanting to speak to people on a certain level. Yeah. I'm not really hiding as much. I mean, occasionally I'll mumble, so maybe you don't know exactly what I say. But it's not as bad as Kurt Cobain. I mean, I can understand the thing he said, right?
Oh, yeah. I've seen some live footage where he's just going, for Come As You Are, intentionally making it bad. But does that make... I guess the answer is yes, but I'm going to say, does it make you feel more vulnerable on stage when you don't have an instrument to hide behind? Because people who play instruments, we kind of got that to hide behind, where if you miss something or whatever, you can do something else. Like, you've got nothing, just your words.
That's true.
Does that create a vulnerability feeling on stage?
I mean, I think a lot of people ask me that question. I would say that there is a little bit of that in there, for sure. But, remember, too, I do mostly all original writing. So if I do make a mistake, you might not even know. Right. I mean, I've been good enough recently to be able to recover from stuff like that. If I forget a certain line, I'll be able to improvise. Sometimes I change lyrics. Yeah. So to reflect where I am, for example.
Did you ever have any panic attacks on stage when you forgot your own stuff and were like, oh, what's the next line?
Definitely. Definitely.
How do you deal with that early on?
It's hard. I would say that I don't know. You just kind of you roll with it. I mean, it's very important to know that when you're up there too, as a band instead of solo. I mean, you have them playing, so you can kind of use them as a crutch a little bit. They mean, as much as they're hiding behind their instruments, I'm hiding behind them too.
You can back up into
Joe, do a solo, that kind of thing.
Fade into the background a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that helps with the support, as you said, creating this collective of the Adam family. So, Adam family, that's the name you give it. Now, explain to people what that is, because I know it's not a set thing. You got to give people a little idea of, what is Adam family? What is the Adam family?
Well, it's like a spoken word indie rock band, I would say. That would probably be the best way to describe it.
That's the Hot Topic MTV genre. You got to put a label.
A lot of hyphens in it. I'm a hyphen. You got to put a label
on it. That's the closest thing. Okay, but what does it mean to you? And what is the the aim of the Adam family? Because I know it's a growing, amorphous sort of thing.
I think it's really to deliver that what I'm saying to you, that the multimedia, in a way, complete experience. Yeah. Because I continue to try to get live artists involved, and then with the band, I have a trumpet player, Brian McCary, who plays with me, and I also have Joe Luckenbull plays guitar, Jason Robbins on bass, And my drummer's been Michael Cesario, who came here on did a program.
Yes,
as
he
well.
was on here promoting Tip. Shout out Tip, Mike C.
Yep, and Hudson O'Keefe, who also plays a little drums as well. And we are trying to get a live artist too, and we want to, with the Adam family, we want to bring more people into an experience. Something that they can be a part of. And something that pushes the bounds of both poetry and music in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to have this thing with the musicians I played with. If they didn't know what to say, or in their mind I say, but play.
Yeah,
I would say just listen. Just don't play for a minute and just listen. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, you'll come up with something. That's kind of what it is. It's like there's a collective there. I can read with no music for hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of, I'm giving them like an invitation to collaborate.
So like sometimes that live tension inspires them, because if it's not scripted, then it's like, well, I got to be on the spot, and you got to think of something new.
Sometimes you get the best stuff out of that. And what will happen too is, you may come up with a riff there that you can use on your project. A lot of these musicians I play with are in other multiple bands.
So. Also kind of like an evolving canvas where they can try out things behind you, because you're putting this bigger parameter on what's possible, that they can experiment more, and then all of a sudden like, oh, I never played in this way, this is freeing.
Right, and bring it to their own and spread that idea around. Definitely.
How did you first approach musicians as a poet? Like, how did you start this thing? Did you just go to like an open mic and say, I've got words, can you do something behind it? Like, how did that see, I want to know how that happened. Like, how did you start with this?
Well, there's really two instances. The first instance was, many years ago when I met Benoit, and I met him through my friend Charles Kramer, who did Film Arts Revolution, and it was based in Miami. And I they did a show at Tuxedos, and I kind of ran into them and met them through just drinking on the scene, that
First
kind of
meeting,
thing.
just hanging out, seeing someone behind, hey, you're playing tonight, cool,
And then it just evolved to that, to come down to the city, see a show. And then I'd have, I write, I do this poetry, you should read some of this,
Okay.
Just read, whatever, and that's how that first kind of happened for me. Most recently, I had taken a short hiatus from performing. I had kept writing, and when I came back the second time, I did the first ever show at Quentin Gullerman's open mic at O'Connor's in Brookfield.
Okay.
And he suggested some musicians I try out, because I read a couple weeks solo.
Yeah.
And I said to Quentin, and he played drums with me, Quentin, a little bit, probably the first one, I would say.
He's so adaptable, man. He's one of the
he
best
said, he said, this is cool. And I said, yeah, I should, do you know any musicians that might be interested? And he set me up with the first two musicians he did was Joe Luckenbull, who I'm playing with right now, and Justin Verga, the bass player and guitarist for Phoenix Tree. And they were the first people I played with. And I just went up there and jammed around with them, and Justin used to say every time we performed it sounded different.
Yeah.
And that's how you build it up, and then now Justin and Joe kind of know my moves already, because they played with me for so long. It comes out a lot smoother. Where people are like, you guys practice like every day, right? No, we don't actually. We should. But at the same time, it was pretty interesting, because you build that comfortability, and then once in a while too, if I feel like the lyrics, I might switch them up on you.
Yeah,
just to mess
throw
with you a little bit.
Curveball.
It's important to do that.
Well, keep them on their toes, as you said. That sort of throwing people in the fire is what made this happen from the beginning. So I assume you got to perpetuate that to some extent to keep it interesting.
Oh yeah,
it's got to be a live thing.
Of course.
And I suppose with poetry, it's like having that evolving background probably helps you in terms of, does it help you with writing at all? Like in terms of when you think of a piece you did that you think works well with the music, does that influence how you're going to write something new or no?
Yeah, I would say that happens more than once. When I did my most recent record, which was, Generator by the Adam Family.
There we go.
Shameless plug.
Not shameless at all. No shame involved.
You can check it out on Spotify.
I'm going to chime that,
Apple
actually.
Tunes.
Generator by Adam Rush, Adam Family. Here we go.
And this one, the music was done by my Jonathan Chapman, who was also on this program.
Another guest, yeah.
We got all the musicians, like other people played on, but there was a couple tracks where he had mixed the music first, and then I listened to it and decided, I should put my song on this. And there's some where I recorded the song solo, and he listened and came up with music.
Oh, so you've done it both ways in terms of how you
Jonathan,
get your stuff
yes, definitely. And I'm doing it with my current band, trying to work on that same scenario. But it reverses it. So in a way, Scott, your answer to your question is both.
Both, yeah.
I mean,
it just ticks off the possibilities.
Exactly. Just opens up all those doors.
So, like, there were some things that you heard the music of and were like, I got to write to this? Or you're like, I have a piece that will fit to this?
Well, that was the first thing. But I also do now is when I have actually a listening, writing listening tape, I call it.
Yeah.
It used to be a Bob Marley album called Talking with Music, I believe it's called. Mm-hmm. It's like a spoken word thing.
Really? Bob Marley did a spoken word?
It's kind of like a spoken word thing, exactly.
I had no idea.
But there's a lot of like instrumentals too, which kind of feel like you're talking and walking in music. So
do you think they were added after the fact, or did he do that intentionally? Like, was it like a Jim Morrison, American Prayer thing, or
probably very similar to that?
I had no idea that existed.
Talking Blues is it called? Talking Blues. That's what it is. Talking Blues. It's one of these records I'll put on, sometimes jazz records, that help me write.
That's
make me in the theme. Yeah, and Jack Kerouac used to listen to jazz and write his prose. Yeah. So music and poetry is not that far off. I mean, when you're talking about a poet like William Blake, for example, I mean, names of his novels are what? Songs of Innocence.
Yeah.
I mean, you read it and you're like, this could be a song. And so there's a real connection there. The oral tradition started with the talking. And then it was the singing around the campfire. You see what I'm saying? It's not that far off.
Well, arguably, isn't that sort of the function of the poetic bard who would tell kind of tales as almost like a traveling historian to bring news / history to people in different, I guess tribes it would be at the time? And is that where the poet kind of spirit came out of, right? Or am I making that up?
No, you're not making that up.
I'm stretching something, maybe?
No, not really. I mean, Plato was considered a poet, and that's going back a really long time, and he was a philosopher. Yeah. So the philosopher-poet being the same thing, very common, very common.
Who else inspires you? Like, do you have poets that inspire you, musicians that inspire you, filmmakers? It seems like you got so many, different media that you're interested in. Like, I wonder, like, who turns you on?
I mean, I like poetry. I like musicians. I would say that probably with music, most kind of go through phases. But I would say that Tom Waits I'm really in a Tom Waits phase of my life right now.
Okay, which album? Rain Dogs was like my jam for a long time.
I mean, Nighthawks at the Diner. Mm-hmm. I mean, Closing Time. I know that's kind of an obvious one, but Nighthawks, I would say, definitely is one of the most inspirational. And just, doing a Spotify or Pandora mix of Tom Waits is like the best thing in the world.
Can't go wrong.
Sometimes I often say that Tom Waits saved my life. Tom Waits is like the Joy Luck Club for men.
Yeah.
It's what keeps us up at night.
What do you find so inspiring about Tom Waits?
I like the fact that he tells a story that's honest. And it feels honest when he portrays it, and I like how he can do so many different genres. Like he can change his voice, he can do something fast, do something soft, something with a lot of thought behind it, something that's more of just a big rawl or row or roar or rant. He's very good at that too.
Yeah, it blew my mind when I found out that he wrote Downtown Train, because I only knew the Rod Stewart. When I see you tonight on a downtown train. I didn't know that was a Tom Waits song, and I heard the Rain Dogs. I'm like, oh my god, like this man can write songs. Like it wasn't just his quirky sensibilities sounding like whatever, but hearing that song and then what it was taking, it's like he's more than just this quirky performer. He's got a great songwriting credit.
Right, definitely. And also, he wrote one of his favorite songs that I listened to recently is Jersey Girl by him, and that's a Springfield song. Mm-hmm. Or not Springfield, Springsteen song. Uh-huh. So,
you mean he did a cover of a Springsteen song?
Yes, Jersey Girl. And the way he does it is so more true to what Springsteen's trying to say, in my opinion.
Like a thing with Cash doing Hurt.
Exactly. It's just like, they take it on their own, and that's part of what poetry is too. They often say poets are big plagiarists.
Yeah.
Because...
Well, everyone is, man. Nothing's new under the sun. You go back and what's the blues? The same song for decades. Come on now. We're all guilty of that. It's how it perpetuates. It's got to be familiar. But would you say that Tom Waits uses that common man voice you were talking about that
Definitely.
inspires you?
Definitely. That would definitely be someone who would be on my list as far as that.
Yeah.
And then poets, I love the Beatnik generation and the Whitman. I showed you earlier an Emily Bronte poem. I'm really into her recently. Herman Melville. I'm kind of fascinated that there's these novelists out there that, pretty famous novelists, Wuthering Heights, Moby Dick, that are actually really big poets too.
Yeah.
That they started out as poets because, theme is one of these elements that novels try to push past. So, and that's what I try to do in my poetry is there's.
What do you mean by that? Theme is a
style.
thing to push past.
What?
You said theme is an element that they try to push past. Meaning like getting away from a theme?
No, that they try to portray in novels.
Push out. Okay, I thought you meant like breaking away from a theme.
No.
Poetry helps you do that.
No, well, I think, when you're talking about novelist writing, you've got, plot, characterization, and then you got theme and style. With poetry, I really concentrate on just theme and style.
Yeah.
So for some of these poets to have turned into writers, it's like they basically mastered those other two parts of their psyche and created something because I'm sure their themes, Moby Dick, great theme. Wuthering Heights considered one of the best romantic novels ever written, if not in the top 5.
Crazy romantic, but that definitely covers it all.
So I think that's pretty incredible. So that's stuff I've been kind of, checking out a lot, and of course Charles Bukowski always.
Yeah.
Jack Kerouac. So.
What would you hope to do with your poetry? Like, what do you ever think about a legacy, or if people are going to read this in the future? Any thoughts about like what your poetry could do?
I think with this CD and then the first CD I came out with, Adam Rush, another harmless.
Oh, there we go. We'll hold this up so everyone can see it.
That's the first record I did.
Okay.
Came prepared.
And that was shot down in Long Beach. And
Be a Rush. Oh, that's where. Okay.
Yeah. That's kind of where that phrase comes from. You never asked me where that came from?
Where does the name come from?
Wow, we're gonna
I always
cut
thought
to
your
that.
name was Adam. Sorry. Here we go.
We're gonna cut to
We're
that.
freestyling it.
Okay.
You're a poet. You can appreciate it.
Yes.
Freestyling.
Adam Rush, ATOM, and Rush. The idea behind that is that, it's kind of the phrase from Walt Whitman, for every atom that belongs to you belongs to me as well. It's this idea that we have the same atoms in us going through in life. So it's being. So it's the term is being a part of us. Be a Rush. So I try to be a Rush through my poetry. I try to inspire other people to get up there, do what they do, not be afraid. It's like, well, if this guy can do it. That's why I kind of like doing it totally solo without any music, because then people are like, damn, well, that's part of the whole thing is to inspire people, being a Rush. That's what I try to do pretty much with all the work that I'm doing as far as writing and performing.
So like going out on the limb for them.
Yeah.
So if you're out on the limb, it's like, okay, I can sneak a little bit.
Exactly.
So not to, sorry I cut you off about the name, but back to what you hope that your poetry will do. You're saying with the CDs, you got the recordings and things, but like what do you want it to do for people, the greater populace? So don't worry about this. It's very sturdy.
Is it really
well,
sturdy?
It could be. It comes apart. I don't know how sturdy it is. Sorry.
Dude, this is a tough question, Scott. What is this, like 60 minutes or something? Maybe we should do another one.
Yeah?
Yeah, well, we should just mess around
You
with
want to do another one?
Yeah, let's do another one. That's what I came here to do, right? This is what I like to
solo? You want to do a solo?
Yeah, I could do a solo.
Solo
I could definitely do a solo.
I can do a little finger piano.
Maybe I'll pass over the lyrics to you. Like I said, you can critique me. Like I said to Jesse, you can. I like that.
I'll do a few little touches with that. This is going to be. Mr. Adam Rush has been inspired here to do a live reading with very minimal background.
This one's called Woodman. Put him through the ringer again. Skin his soul till it bleeds a trail for you to follow. Run him through the meat grinder. Release the lion out of his den. Pin him for tonight's feast. Hang the phoenix for a laugh. Break his heart till it bleeds a track for you to be hollow. Your voodoo dolls won't work on him this time. Got her ringer on mute. His resurrection, no surprise. 'Cause I burn. I am woodman, and I burn. Put him through the ringer again. Release his soul till it sinks the whale for you to descend. Run him through the meat grinder. Release the lion out of his den. Pin him for tonight's feast. Mark the phoenix to form. Break his heart again till it bleeds a track for you to be hollow, for you to ascend. Suspicious scholars of the solar bird, sundogs refract light, reflect on spite. Poet without a crown. Got her ringer on mute. My resurrection, no surprise. 'Cause I burn. I am woodman, and I burn. I sit there in the hot sun and close my eyes, and there's a golden swarming peace dancing above my eyelids. It comes with the sure hand, a soft blessing as immense as the sky. Always body and mind. It comes perfect and stable. All the dark torture is a memory, simple golden eternity. Nothing ever happened, not even this. There will be farewells followed by warm smiles, making my home more whole, my whole more home. We share music, words, art with friends, strangers. We meditate, we sing. We dance, we resurrect in the wild. Simple golden eternity. On smoky winter nights, I'll stand in the meadow under the stars. Something good will come of all things yet, and it will be golden and eternal, just like that.
Yeah. Now speak on that. What is that about?
Well, like so many poems, sometimes they start from the simplest things, maybe a girlfriend breaking up with me, that was put me through the ringer again, that kind of idea that, you've shredded me now, and you've released the lion out of his den, you've made things worse, but it's also about, resurrection and, life and, being able to, get over something.
The phoenix?
Ashes, exactly, the phoenix idea, rising out of those ashes, but being able to understand the ashes part, to understand that you need this time to rest, mm-hmm. and get your feelings back together so you resurrect stronger, being able to heal the right way.
Yeah.
And then at the end is what a lot of the musicians, I always practice with them. It's called the prayer. I have some prayers I put at the end. Mm-hmm. And in this prayer, it's kind of a hope that, everything that you feel that's, people might say, you're crazy for feeling that. Why do you feel that? That's not what's happening. That's not what's real. It's not what's there. It's, you're not alone. Like, I feel those things too. And something good will come of that. Yeah. Whether you believe it or not, you will become a better person because you think that way.
Why do you think there's that judgment about those feelings? Like, why do you think people have that feeling? They're like, oh, I'm not supposed to feel this way. Is it society? What? It
is society, I think, But it's, I got that all my life, as a poet,
Yeah.
I mean, I used to joke about people would make fun of me when I was young when I was a poet. Now it's funny, it's when you think about it, but I was also a jock. So I kind of did both. And people would be like, wait, you're into sports, but you're a poet. I go, yeah, are those things mutually exclusive? Because that's not the world I live in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like they're kind of closer than people want to believe, you know? And both sides get shit. That's no expense.
Why do you think there is that, dichotomy in our culture to say that this goes in that box, that goes in this box? And you can't. The
it's high school.
Shall not meet.
It's high school, basically. Yeah. And I don't know who created that, but it's pretty scary.
Yeah, but do you think it's people playing out patterns they've learned from their upbringing, or it's just that's what teenagers are like? They're just, POSs.
I don't think it's them.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, it comes down to, whether you believe people are a blank slate. I mean, I feel like I was a pretty blank slate even going into high school.
Yeah.
I was impressionable, I don't think that that's something that you learn so early on in life. I know a lot of people that are even impressionable now.
Yeah.
I could get them to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge if I worked hard enough at it.
Is that a promise? Please don't. If it happens, you didn't hear it here. So again, with the poetry thing and the communication and with you're saying telling stories from the common man's voice, and I think you kind of already answered my question by saying that breaking that sense of isolation to say somebody else feels the same way as you do, like, is that the main thing you'd like to do with poetry, is to reach out to people and get them to...
to reach out to it. I would love to be able to, read and write poetry without having to worry about having a day job, for example.
Yeah.
So I am working on a poetry book that's coming out soon that a friend of mine named Chris Finch is going to supposedly do some of the artwork for it. It's, about 80 poems worth of selected poetry with an introduction by my friend Andrew Phelps. I did... before these CDs, I don't have copies with them tonight, but I did have 2 poetry books that I came out with. One was called Obscene Letters to Mo, which was in 1992, and then I came out with another one in 1996 called Trench Madness, both having intros and being basically poetry. One was black and white, and the other was full 4-color print. So, I'm going to do something similar there, but now with the e-market, probably have an e-version of it,
right.
And then have one that people can
so
take some words home.
Access from anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess that point of access is very important to what you do.
Yeah.
You said a lot of the aims of combining these multimedia things is to give people many points of access to come into the words, because it's like, if you're a music person, you might dig the music, then hear the words. If you're a visual person, you might see that, hear the music, then,
Yeah.
So you're thinking of all ways to pull people in. That's great, man. That's a very good approach to take to putting your art out there, making it as accessible, because that's great art. It should be accessible to anyone, but also universal in that way that you said, speaking
Everyone.
in a common voice, that you're getting. You don't feel like you're being talked down to. You're invited to the party, so to speak.
It's a universal mind, it's not about. Trying to confuse any thoughts. Also collaborating wise, you did the artwork for a generator.
Yes, that's true.
It's done by Scott Long, Scott Elliott here.
Yeah, many iterations of that. That was a fun project, man, doing the artwork for that. I listened to the album a lot, while drawing, and it definitely put me in a mindset. Those songs are in my head, and the words and things creep in. There's always this kind of little inside joke that we have, me and Jesse and a few other people, but Danbury, 3 a.m.
Yes.
Right? And we were sitting here one day, hanging out on a Sunday, and someone said, what time is it? And it's 3 p.m. And Jesse, I think it was Jesse or me, or somebody said, Gaylordsville, 3 p.m. And we all got it. And now it's a thing we say now and then. We're Brookfield, 7 p.m. It's there's some cultural little...
It's almost like a lyric or something that you find, in a band or something that you... want to share with your friends, and I don't know, it's cool, man.
It's almost like a meme in that way, or
an inside joke. What's going on? Stanbury, 3 a.m.
Yeah, but something about it, it's putting a time and place to something. It's sort of like that little snapshot, and it's you just chose that one for that poem, and probably not even thinking about it, but it translatable to be here and now, here's where we are right now.
I think I remember with that piece in particular, if I do recall, it was reading a stanza, and then at the end of the stanza I would just be didn't know what to call the chorus or something, and looked at the clock, and it was Danbury 3:15 a.m., but that doesn't have as much rain. Drop the 15 off, that kind of thing. And then I just found myself doing that, and I was that's a cool rhythm, and 3 a.m. was kind of when the bars officially closed. Don't tell anybody.
It's when the weirdness happens.
On a weekend here in Blue State, Connecticut.
That's when the magic happens, yeah. So any final things you want to say about what poetry has meant to you, or what you think it could do for other people? Why is poetry important? Why should we care?
Well, I think poetry, the expression of poetry, like artwork is, and music for you guys, is such a release. I often say that poetry saved my life because it kind of did. I don't think I'd be where I am now if I didn't express the things I did from, a poem like Mirror that I wrote when I was 15 years old about living in the attic of a house that was 250 years old. Whoa. To the first poem I ever wrote, which was called Ghost in the Dark Shadows of My Room, which was basically about having somebody underneath your bed and being scared.
Yeah, the nightmare thing.
And to the stuff that I do now, which is, even the piece I did a little earlier, Reckoning, had been probably written maybe about a year and a half ago now, maybe 2 years ago, which is about my process. It takes me about a year to formulate.
What's the Reckoning? Is that the Reckoning? Is the process?
No, Reckoning was that poem I did. The one that started.
No, but in the poem, like, what is the Reckoning? Say this reckoning cannot last. Like, what is the Reckoning?
It's kind of related to Donald Trump. I'd have to admit there is a little feeling of that in it.
Hey, man, if you're a poet, you're sensitive to.
I think I was writing it when he was on the TV, doing some kind of speech.
So it was a reaction.
Exactly, and and if you think about it, it's so many stuff in life now with all the issues, the big issues that are coming, the immigration, the climate control, not to get too much into politics.
Hey,
there is a reckoning in all these things.
Yeah.
And people don't want to react. It's, and the frequency hacked is kind of like we're hacked. Our society's hacked in a way, by these things. We're chained
literally
by
about
things.
the Russians, apparently. Supposedly,
There's also a play on that as well. Exactly.
The modern digital age. What's true? What's not?
Exactly. So when people a couple years ago would say, when Trump first got in, Freudian slip. They say, well, where's your Donald Trump poem? I got to hear a Donald Trump poem. It's not like that. It's more subtle. I believe poetry needs to be subtle. If I wanted to do that, I would just get into politics. You know what I mean? Like I would just get into that then.
Yeah.
But when you write a poem and it's got that subtle political message that kind of feeds in the times, it's this prophetic thing we're talking about. This feeling that something's on the street. People are talking about it. Maybe CNN hasn't found out about it yet, but it's still there and it's simmering among society, among the underground, I would call. The people that, really love music and love art. And
so you give that a voice, like a
voice,
not necessarily that
guidance to it, maybe.
Yeah,
let's
maybe a release to it, maybe a pathway for it.
Huh.
I don't want to put on you that you're attempting to be a voice of anything.
No, voice
maybe
of what?
Channeling or something.
Do they have that anymore? I guess Beck used to have that most recently.
What?
And then it didn't work out with Kurt Cobain, the voice of a generation, right?
Oh, well, yeah.
That's a lot of stress over here. Yeah, and you're brutal over here, Mike Wallace.
The hot seat.
So do you want to do well, it was hot here before I had the heater going on. My seat was very hot when I sat down. Like to make the guests comfortable. It dissipates over time. Do you want to do a piece to lead out of this? You want to do we can do a little music accompaniment or something? Or
I was thinking that maybe we'll play this track I brought and just talk about a little bit of it.
Tell us about the track. We're going to do a track that's going to be leading this out. Yeah. So let us know about this track you're going to put on.
So not only the novel I'm working on with a couple of my friends, I've also working on a record, which will probably be an Adam Family record, with the music created by Joe Luckenbull. And Jason Robbins is on here playing bass. Michael Cesario, as well as Hudson O'Keefe, been playing drums. On this particular track, though, I believe it's just Michael Cesario playing on it. And then we also have our saxophone player, Max Abram, former saxophone player that used to play with us. He actually played with us just recently at our last show at the Factoria up in Peekskill. And Brian McCary on trumpet.
Nice.
So, and this track will be on our record we're going to come out with, which is the stuff we recorded at that studio that you guys went to the show at.
Yeah.
That was a studio, Lucy Super 7, and we used to do these Nucleus shows, and we used to record there late at night, like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And we came out with a whole bunch of great tracks, and this one is... it's called These Days is the poem of mine. The music is called Motif into a song called Don't Be Rude. So it's kind of like a medley.
Nice.
And,
so is this a debut?
This was actually played once on the Pauling radio station when I had a gig. Yeah, we did put this on there already, but we don't have this on any social media right now.
So this would be social media day.
This would be the second stream.
50th episode.
Yeah, you're number 50, man. 50th
Number 50.
episode, yeah.
How'd you know my age?
It's that poet in me just had that foresight, Nostradamus, going to be prophetic about it all. So the name of the track is
These Days.
These Days. And are you calling it Adam Family or just Adam Rush? What's the name behind it?
Probably be the Adam Family once
Adam
we release
Family.
it, because these are the pickers I play with now. Some of them, Joe lives around here, as well as the other guys are from the Peekskill, Yorktown area. So
Awesome. So These Days by Adam Family is coming up soon. And thank you all for listening. We love you all. Talk to you soon. Bye.
these days, things accumulate like weather. Moments will freeze in slow train motion. The flash rivers we endure. These days, things. When you see, hear, listen, if you're vacant to a smoke death, trapped antique attic, a worn circuit. This days has very little sun. The insincerity of timely sun rays, flattened by the trees. These days, things have no meaning, just memory. Devoted and wandering, exhausted and wandering. The path you remember or need to discover. These days, things are seen with much disguise. Seasons forget one another. We see the acceleration of erosion in every fall and rise, or need to realize. This days has very little sun. The insincerity of timely sun rays, flattened by the trees. These days, things dissolve seized remnants. Dreams will sleep in edge disturbance. Rotating haze in inferior machines. A mindless voice we disband. These days, things. When you feel, know the reasons for uncontrollable sadness. We may never know why she walks into incoming traffic. Mechanical world, a torn devotion. This days has very little sun. The insincerity of timely sun rays flattened by the trees. Figures for the classified, punchlines for the comics, a way to read something and not really understand it. Nominated on time, press lines for the drones, selected media, all programmed, waiting for you. Elected on the front page, pinpricks for the wicked, a way to kill yourself without dying. Corrupted in the funnies, idols and false idolry, redacted pages burned, waiting for you.